So the first thing I want to say is it's crazy. It's crazy, right? Except that's not really true. It's not crazy. It's kind of the exact opposite of crazy. It's exactly what you would expect. Now, is it crazy in the sense that, this happened? I would love that it didn't. Yeah, that's true. And is it crazy in the sense that it doesn't fit in your head? It feels like something that should not happen, feels like something that couldn't have happened, feels outside of reality. Yeah, that's crazy. But if we're totally honest with ourselves, is it unexpected? Is it outside the bounds of reality? Is it something that we shouldn't have expected? No, unfortunately. Unfortunately, not. I can't say more how much I would like this not to have happened. That being said, I'm going to try to paint with, as bright of colors as I possibly can about this event, which is just simply saying this is analogous to Martin Luther King being assassinated. Not for the exact same reasons, not for the exact same political stances, certainly not. But it is indicative of the fact that, the people that are opposing the messaging are losing their power. They're losing their control. They're losing their grasp on the cultural institutions and just the culture in general. And they feel that that is a real direct threat to themselves, their sense of identity, and the only way they can respond is with violence. And certainly, the reason I say this is analogous to Martin Luther King and not any other political, assassinations, of which there have been many, not only in the U.S. but everywhere. The reason I say that is because most of those other assassinations are directly political. They're targeted against figures in governmental positions and who are running for governmental positions, those types of people. They are unfortunately, they're the at the brunt of that type of violence. When you have somebody like a Charlie Kirk or a Martin Luther King die, they are people that were sort of just intellectual thought leaders. They were people that were mostly just vehicles for the culture. They were, you know, they inhabited our general cultural consensus about how people thought about these things, and therefore they act much more as a symbol than a governor or something like that. And therefore that's why this thing stings and feels different than like when Trump got shot. It feels different than even like a JFK being shot or something like that. It feels as if they are trying to kill the ideology as opposed to the practicalities, the bureaucracy of, we want this specific political action stopped. No. This feels more like we are trying to eradicate your ideology. And that is not good. That's why I'm talking about it. I don't think this channel is really, for this. I don't really think it's true. It's just I don't feel permission to talk about anything else. Later on we'll talk about other stuff for sure. But for right now, for today, unfortunately, I have to talk about it. I have to get it out of my system. And again, the silver lining to this, if you can call it that, is that this is indicative of a real legitimate sea change in the ideas that are shaping the culture in these things. And before this, it was sort of like progressive leftism, that type of stuff is the water you're swimming in, it's the air you're breathing. That is the cultural environment that everyone exists in, and everyone is responding to that. Now, this is not the case. Now, this is not the case. I think most people probably did, and when I say most, 51, 60% of people, maybe 70, maybe 80% of people probably agreed with the majority of Charlie Kirk's takes. Not everything, but the general consensus of it was that, yeah, he makes good points. Makes sense. In the same way that, Martin Luther King, when he was killed, his ideas were pretty close to mainstream. Again, not everybody agreed with everything he would say or, would go as far as his ideas were pushing. But they had the general sense of like, yeah, this kind of stuff is unjust. This kind of stuff is wrong. We don't want this. The argument makes sense. I think that's basically where we are with the Charlie Kirk stuff and, you know, conservative populism in general now, is that most people probably agree with that, and they are going to take his death as a symbol that, okay, yeah, we actually need to go further with this. We need to go harder with this. We need to actually really do our best in our own, day-to-day lives to live out these ideals. Because if not, this is the answer. These people that are clearly bad actors, evil, they are going to do everything they can to retain that power, and we don't want it to happen. But again, the fact that they are resorting to this level of violence means that they're doing it because they feel that they are irrelevant. They are becoming it. They're becoming much more so, and they're not really getting out of it. That's a good thing. I'm happy about that. That's a good thing. It's a good thing that, the KKK is no longer a force in American politics. It's a good thing that lunatic lefty progressives are no longer part of the conversation. They're done. They're out. They're over. That's a good thing. That is a good thing. And we can all now start moving towards a place where, yeah, guess what? We do actually all agree. We all are Americans. We might disagree slightly on policy. What are the things we should spend our money on? But we do have these core values in common. And we can recognize that when something horrible like this happens. You can think about, the last time that this happened in my lifetime was 9/11, where there was this large event and it just consumed everyone's attention. It was just like the thing that you had to watch. You didn't even have a choice. You were just, sucked into the television. Your parents, obviously of my age, my parents were just like glued to the television, just couldn't stop watching it, couldn't stop consuming because it felt like something you needed to know about. And now this is what this feels like. It feels like things are different. Now, does this mean that things are going to turn around tomorrow? No. No. Unfortunately, there is probably going to be a degree of, a pendulum swinging back. And certainly, I think it's very likely there will be more political violence, unfortunately. But again, if we're looking at the tides of history, you can look back on Martin Luther King and, his death certainly heralded immediately an age of increased political violence. But we didn't see huge riots after Charlie Kirk. We didn't see huge, unless I'm mistaken, let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. We didn't see an enormous amount of just immediate civil unrest like we did when, these other political figures were assassinated. And maybe in the future we will, but I take the fact that we haven't seen it so far as a good sign, as a good signal that, you know what, this time, this side is going to adhere to, the better angels of our nature, and we are going to regain a sense of real American identity and solidarity in that identity. And that, you know what, we actually can say, you know what, this guy died to try to bring us back to a place where we can talk about our issues and disagree and not be at each other's throats. And it seems like that was his goal in life. And if he meets it in death, then, more power to him. That's all I'll say for today about this. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Good luck in all your endeavors, for real. And I'll say farewell for now.